welcome to the fourth and final of this online series looking at artificial intelligence, the delivery of policing and justice. I'm Bernard Ricks. I'm the founder of Policing Insight and Policing TV, and we're delighted with CJS Event Solutions to be putting on this series, and indeed to be looking to put on an in-person event in the not too distant future to complement this online series. My thanks to the organisers, the presenters, and to you, our audience. Now enjoy this fourth episode.
I'm real excited to share with you policing, what the future looks like, the transformative potential of artificial intelligence. And so first, if you want to reach out and join me on LinkedIn or whatever, provide my QR code. So I love collaborating with folks. If there's anything that I can do to help you in what you're trying to work on, I think it's important for all of us to be able to work together. We're all trying to head to the same thing. And so I think that will really help us. So I really do believe AI holds the key to revolutionizing policing, and like never before. So we're going to talk about AI and the human interaction, crime prevention with AI, crime detection, crime response, and then the ethical considerations and challenges. And one of the biggest things that I like to just really emphasize is, if we don't make human interaction the forefront of anything we do as we implement AI, we are going to compromise our relationship with the community. And going forward in the future, that is a really, really big deal if we want to continue to maintain trust and a feeling that people want to work with the police. So what does it look like for transforming crime prevention? Well, AI is going to help in multiple different ways, and we know that. It'll enable us to predict, prevent all sorts of criminal activity, deal with quality of life issues, predictive policing, although I think that predictive policing, we'll talk a little bit more in a minute, but it could become, it needs to become something different than what we think of with hotspots and police officers just policing an area when the data says there's a lot of crime in an area. We're also going to be talking about surveillance, what it's like to be monitoring spaces and public spaces, and maybe when it's appropriate for that not to be police driven, but more private driven. So as we talk about predictive policing, I see in the coming years, we're going to see responsible data dashboards. Why is that? Because algorithms aren't really completely auditable without that. That provides us the ability to show the public that we're paying attention to anomalies in our data and problems or concerns that are red flags that we need to deal with. Think of it like when you type a document in Microsoft Word and all of a sudden spell check starts underlining different issues that you may have in the document. We want to be able to provide that to the public so that way they know we're aware of racial biases that could be coming up or anything else, and that we're addressing those issues actively within our system. That's for our chatbots, that is for any type of predictive analysis, or if you're utilizing facial recognition, anything of that nature. We need to be paying attention to that, and what are the benefits that are associated with it. Also, what are the challenges? You know, we talk about predictive policing. We saw some issues come up after it was implemented 12, 15 years ago. And what we're finding is there was over-policing in issues. The police are in areas, the police are going to areas significantly more. People of different socioeconomic backgrounds are adversely being affected. And so what are we going to do with that? And that's why I see that we're going to end up with a layered approach. It's going to be data. It's also going to be the programs, and what are the chatbots, and what do we look at together to find the best program for implementation in those hotspot areas where there's crime. And then what is the design, you know, the crime by design? Do we need a different park in the location? Is it that the fence is in disrepair? What is it that is contributing, or maybe it is even the lighting that's going to affect why our predictive policing outcome needs to change? So don't look at it as just a data analysis, but it's going to be a combination in layers. The other thing I want to talk about is surveillance. And there are times that it's appropriate for police to have surveillance. It also is appropriate that many private entities have their own surveillance. And I really believe there's going to continue to be a collaboration And in fact, I think there may be a greater movement towards privatization on a lot of the surveillance versus having that in the public domain. And that is for those privacy issues and the ethics issues. So that way, police are only really looking for footage when it's appropriate, crime-based, etc., and not just watching people or gathering information that makes it more like an authoritarian state that people are very concerned about. So we want to make sure we're addressing those privacy concerns and everything that's associated with that. When we talk about revolutionizing crime detection, that it's going to be more than facial recognition or automated license plate reader hits or data analytics. It's going to be a combination of all of that working together. A lot of times right now we see a lot of different analytics and silos. That's going to change because you're going to use chatbots to be cross-pollinating to find behavioral analytics. What are people behaving like when we're having a community event? Are people actually receiving that? So maybe that helps us to drive the way we build our community events going forward, up to and including what does it look like with a facial recognition issue, and when is that going to be appropriate, when is it not? I mean, we recognize issues like human trafficking where facial recognition could really help us, but when is that going to be appropriate? And so I'd like to talk a little bit more about that facial recognition. Obviously, in the U.S., there are a lot of constitutional issues that surround that. In the U.K. or the U.K. has a lot that the Met's putting out there and the way that they're being transparent with it, while the EU is saying, hey, listen, we have concerns about live facial recognition. In France, for example, with the Olympics, saying, we need to utilize a level of that in order to keep the Olympics safe. And they're obviously, France is a part of the EU. So what does that all look like? How are things going? What do we utilize this facial recognition technology for? When is it appropriate? When is it not? And maybe it's more appropriate in many cases that is private entities that may be utilizing that. And then when the police department or police need that, it's obtained through some sort of warrant or whatever. Now, what does that look like with bias issues? We know that there are problems with facial recognition, some of the biases associated. And even though we can say that humans are doing some level of oversight, do we end up in a place where our biases, we don't realize it, but the biases are giving us a lot of false leads and we're contacting people that shouldn't be contacted. And then we end up with a situation where people are being over-policed again. So those are all the things that we're going to have to address going forward. These behavioral analytics are not just about analyzing whether or not we have criminal activity. They're also going to be analyzing our officers, and that's going to help us to provide better training, supervisor mentorship. Officers are going to be interacting with chatbots in the future. That is what it's going to look like. It's also going to help with early intervention, mental health, and ways that we can help make our officers stronger. So it's not just going to be about what we see with the public and what we think that the public needs. The other part of that is we are going to see an increase in robots and drones, not as much for interfaces with the public, but for more of those dangerous situations, explosives, or going in and checking inside of a building versus sending officers or a SWAT team in there. We also need to be considerate of the ethical considerations with that. And that is where our origins of our cameras and those devices coming from, and what's the spyware that could be installed, and do we understand what all of that is associated with. But I do see, regardless, we're going to see search and rescue, emergency supply deliveries. There's a lot of different benefits, but there are also going to be challenges and ethical considerations that we need to work on associated with that. When we look at training and back-end efficiency, we're going to be talking about those chatbots again. What is it that we need to do a better job on the back end so that we're able to provide more support, to have time with the public and public programs and public education? These are all things that we're going to need to work through. And then we're going to need to be working through that technology bias, that propensity to lean on the computers and just letting the computers do the work for us, but always double checking with that checks and balances to make sure that we're paying attention to what it is that we're doing. And so we want to be able to utilize a chatbot to look for trends and reports, realize that maybe there's something we need to train officers on when it's associated to how we handle victims or how we interact with victims, or maybe looking for more suspect information or even a community program. All of those are things that we need to be paying attention to, but that brings us back to those ethical considerations. How much is too much? When is it a problem? Are we going to end up with biases? What are we doing with the biases? And what is that going to train our data on? Are we going to build chatbots? Are we going to train our chatbots on synthetic data, so that way we're able to actually understand what is getting put in the chatbot and making sure it's trained in the right manner, so that way we don't end up with some of those biases that have been in AI in general and some of the issues that people have brought up. And what does that look like? And how are we going to regulate that? And what are we going to do with our stakeholders? And how are we going to collaborate this information with our public? These are all things that we need to be looking at. And it's not just the STPs, I call it the same 10 or 20 people. Oh, we went to these people and they said this is great, so this is what we're doing. But we really need to be gathering that data from the population that we're not hearing from, and making sure that we're collaborating with our stakeholders. They understand what we're doing. They understand what we're trying to accomplish, and that everybody is happy with what we're doing. If you went out and surveyed the public and asked them if they were really concerned that we're using AI for spell check in our report writing, I think you would get pretty close to a unanimous people are not that concerned about it. And, contrast that with live facial recognition software, and it's a whole different world. So we want to make sure that we're interacting with the public and really getting their blessing on what we do. And sometimes it's okay to pump the brakes or hold on things that maybe the public is concerned about, and work on some of these other back-end systems so we can gain their trust and show them what we are doing, how we are doing it, so they have a greater understanding, which helps build that trust into what we are doing. Now, obviously, all of that is going to get back to the data privacy, because people are concerned what you're doing with their information. And so we're going to see in the coming years with the fifth industrial revolution, you're going to see more blockchain technology. It's audible, it's transparent, auditable, I should say, and transparent. But the other part of that is getting things migrated to the cloud. There is no way we are going to be able to utilize off our on-premise servers and have the level of redundancy that we need to have in safety and security, and utilizing AI to even assist us with the security of our systems, because there's no way you're going to be able to keep up with an on-premise system. Even with some level of AI, you're going to want to have a collaboration with the best of the best in order to maintain privacy. We don't want to end up in a situation where we're having breaches routinely, which is really compromising people's sensitive data. And that, again, shows the public that we really have their best interest in mind, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of that and that we're paying attention to that in every way we possibly can. And so bringing all of this together, obviously we're going to use AI to revolutionize law enforcement. What we need to do is make sure that we're working with the community, not telling them what they need, but more talking about what we have, what our resources are, how we solve problems together, and what AI-powered policing actually looks like, and how people are still going to be at the forefront of no matter what we do. And so sometimes it might be appropriate to not be as focused on that 1% where we need to be solving a burglary or robbery, but focusing on that 50 or 60% of the lion's share of calls that we get that don't have good solve ratings. And what does it look like that we can do to do a better job getting those things accomplished? And I think we will find that our chatbots will help us with interacting with our police officers, learning better ways that they can solve problems and crimes. It'll take a lot of the pressure off the first line supervisor trying to check for a lot of administrative issues that a chatbot will be able to take care of, allowing our first line supervisors to actually be mentors and coaches, talking with people, making sure that their subordinates understand the essence of what we're trying to accomplish, thinking outside the box. We'll use the computers to think for us for some things on the monotony, but we still want to be able to think outside the box. Yes, I'm aware artificial general intelligence is on the horizon. Yes, that means that a computer could be smarter than a human. We want to be careful with some of those implementations. And if we don't even have these initial AI implementations under control and implemented properly, there's no way we can start even embarking on the artificial general intelligence, because that's where I think the fear of people thinking the computers are going to take over and rule them is coming from. We want to be able to show we're responsible with what we have already. So as this continues to evolve, we're able to actually show people the greatest things and let them know that we have their best interest in mind. And ultimately, people are going to feel a reduction in crime, and they're going to feel more paid attention to. They're going to feel that personal touch, which is what we want to be able to provide for them. And that personal touch ultimately is what gives them the greatest service of all. So in conclusion, I really see AI changing the world, and I think it's going to change the world only if we're working together with the public.